I remember that when I was applying for jobs fresh out of Oxford University and then later on right after my PhD at Cambridge, I found it very frustrating that most of the tips about CV or resume writing online seem to be very subjective. Even when talking to others asking for advice, you are always faced with the caveat that whatever worked for me might not necessarily work for you. But being a scientist, I was always convinced that there must be some common factors behind CVs that are successful, and there must be things that we must avoid at all costs. This is why I was so happy when I came across Austin Belsack's study that was published in 2022. As part of the study, they reviewed 125,484 resumes with the goal of identifying the main factors that are costing job seekers their job. This is so exciting because it takes out the subjectivity and the guesswork from the equation. So this means that now we have data-backed, proven tips on how to write a winning CV. And these tips are applicable to everybody, whether you are fresh out of uni looking for an entry-level job or you're a seasoned professional looking to refresh your CV. And as someone who is currently part of the hiring process, I can tell you that I have reviewed over 5,000 CVs as a COO and as a founder, and I can tell you that the study and the findings are so on point and are things that I have personally experienced as a recruiter. So in this video, I will summarize the 5 key learnings from this study. How does that impact you and your CV writing, and actionable tips on how to make sure that you have a winning CV at the end. So shall we? Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Sheen. I am an Oxford and Cambridge graduate currently working in Dubai. And on this channel, we explore practical tips for personal and professional development. So if you're a professional looking for advice, please consider subscribing. If you want to learn more about the study, I will leave the link down below in the description box so you can check it out and do some more digging. So number 1 is having your LinkedIn profile on your resume. The study showed that including your LinkedIn profile link on your resume increased your chances of getting an interview invite. But only 48% of those who send their resumes had their LinkedIn profile linked on their resume. So let's look a little bit deeper into this. From this graph, at a first glance, we can see that at every level of jobs, whether it is entry level or much more experience, having a comprehensive LinkedIn profile linked on your resume greatly increases your chances of being interviewed compared to not having your LinkedIn profile. But in my opinion, the more interesting takeaway from this graph shows that if you have a bare bone LinkedIn profile that is linked on your resume, it actually negatively impacts you and decreases your chances of actually getting an interview compared to not even having a LinkedIn profile. So in this case, you would be encouraged to actually hide your LinkedIn profile if it is not worthwhile to show. Well, there is a big competitive edge here, obviously, given that only 48% of people are including their profile on their resume. It's very easy to include your profile. How do we make sure that it is comprehensive enough to give you this competitive edge? Firstly, you should have a very professional headshot and a nice picture of you that is very professional, and your banner should not be empty. Have something there that is relevant to either your experience, your personal brand, or just generally who you are trying to portray professionally. Your work experience section of your profile should be very detailed but succinct. So you need to make good use of words and keywords in order to show what you have done and achieved, and it should be very clear. And you should show that you are actively engaging to try and build meaningful business partnerships through LinkedIn by reposting, by commenting on other people's posts, and by sharing your own original posts. Now, we're not done with the graph. Let's get back to it. If we compare the graph when you're at an entry-level job and at a more experienced senior level, you see that the impact that your comprehensive LinkedIn profile has is much lesser the higher you go. Therefore, this piece of information is very important if you're applying for an entry-level job. Make sure that your LinkedIn profile is top-notch and that it is included on your resume. The second finding is that candidates only tend to include 51% of the keywords and skills as described on the job description. These days, most of the job applications that are submitted online go through an initial screening that is done by applicant tracking systems. So this is completely AI driven and there's no human interaction at this point. This applicant tracking system has been tasked to filter out the low potential candidates, and they do this by filtering the resumes based on how many keywords and skills that are in the job descriptions are being matched on the resume. So therefore, the more words you have that are very similar to the job description, the more likely the system will recognize you as being a high potential candidate. Now, the study also showed that on average, a job description will include around 43 keywords. But given that we know that candidates will only match about 51% of these, which means only around 20 keywords are still being matched on the resume as opposed to 43. Now, if we were to dismantle this a little bit and dig a little bit deeper, if we look at the comparison between hard skills and soft skills, it's even less so in the soft skills. Now, let's take it another level and dig a little bit deeper. If we were to split this into hard skills and soft skills, we see that candidates will include at least 60% of the hard skills keywords that are needed, but only 28% of the soft skills that are needed are shown on the resume. This is such an easy problem to solve. There are so many places online where you can go and Google and you'll find a list of soft skills that are required on a resume, and you can go through them and pick the ones that are more relevant to you and to the job that you're applying for. I'll put some examples of these websites down below for you to check out. Now, if you're thinking, how do I make sure that I am adding the keywords and how do I recognize the keywords in a job description that should be included in the resume? Very easy to fix again. Just use a word cloud tool. They're easily available, they're free, they're online. I'll give you one example. So let's say we want to apply for this particular job on LinkedIn. We copy the job description, we go to the word cloud tool and we paste it there. And now they will show us the keywords that pop up most frequently. And now you can just choose the ones that are relevant and make sure that they're added to your resume in an organic manner. Number 3 is including measurable metrics can really make your CV stand out. But the study showed that only 26% of the applicants included 5 or more metrics that had measurable factors to them, and over a third of the applicants had no measurable metrics at all in their resume. Can you imagine? Anywhere you look online for tips on how to write CVs or resumes, the one thing they will tell you is to make sure that when you're talking about your work experience, that you outline in very measurable metrics. What did you do? How did you achieve it? What was the outcome? And what was your personal contribution to it? This is because it's the easiest and most clear way for the recruiter to be able to assign a value to your contribution and understand your skills and your experience, especially compared to others. For example, if every consultant were to say, we work with companies to identify organizational challenges, and then we do some data analysis and we come up with practical solutions to help the companies and present it back to them. There is no way here to understand which part of this whole process were you actively involved in, and how well did you do compared to someone else who did the same task? How often did you do it? What was the impact of the work that you did for the organization that you were helping? I cannot tell anything from this, and therefore I cannot rank you based on someone else, and therefore I can't see your potential, so you immediately drop down below the list. Now, to tackle this problem, Google recruiters have specifically recommended the XYZ formula. The longer version of this is that I accomplished X as measured by Y by doing Z. Let's go through an example to make it more easy to see. If I were to say that I grew the revenue for small and medium businesses, it's okay, right? You don't know anything yet. But if I say that I grew the revenue for small and medium businesses by 10% quarter on quarter, now you have a metric. It is better, but it is still not fully comprehensive. Third version, if I say that I grew the revenue of 15 small and medium businesses by 10% quarter on quarter by mapping software features that could help them achieve their business goals. Boom, this is the best one. You can see the X part, the Y part, and the Z part. So here you have it. Now you know exactly how to put measurable metrics when you're describing your work experience. The length of your resume really matters, and this study has shown that the ideal length is between 475 to 600 words. And you know what? 77% of the resumes were outside of this range, whether too short or too long. Now, if we look at this graph, we see that the resumes that were in the sweet spot of the word count were twice as likely to get an interview invite as compared to those that were shorter or longer. One thing to bear in mind though, when looking at this graph, is that we are not separating it in terms of the type of job and the level of the role that you're applying for. Because obviously there are certain jobs, such as being in research as a professor or a researcher or fellow, you might have to be a little bit more verbose with what you are explaining, and there's a lot more to write about. And similarly, if you're applying for more senior roles, you might have a lot more experience given that you've worked for longer, and there's a lot more to include in there. Therefore, the word count will be a lot longer than just the 475 to 600 words. So that's a little caveat to bear in mind. But if you're not in these categories, make sure to hit the sweet spot of the word count. And it's very easy To know how long your resume is, we all know how to use the word count tool on Word. So just make sure that you check the word count and try to make it fit as much as possible. Buzzwords and fluffy content should not be included in your CV. But the study found that 51% of resumes actually included buzzwords and cliches and fluff content that just really have a negative impact on how your resume is viewed. This is every single recruiter's nightmare, to find cliches and just buzzwords in the CV, so please avoid them at all costs. Whenever you mention what you are responsible for or what synergistic approach you took, or when you talk about how highly motivated you are, you accomplish one thing and one thing only: you make the recruiter hate you. Put yourself in the shoes of a recruiter who's having to read 50 to 100 resumes in one day. If they keep seeing these same thing of how you know how to do the synergies between different things, or how you're really passionate about saving the world, and they keep seeing this coming up, they will automatically think that this is a low potential candidate and they do not stand out from the crowd. So avoid them at all costs. And now if you're not sure what buzzwords are and what are these cliches and fluff that you need to avoid in your resumes, if you just type list of buzzwords and cliches to avoid on your resume on Google, you'll find them, and then just make sure that none of these are included in your resume. They are buzzword free. There you have it. You have the 5 key findings of this study. None of these are groundbreaking, but it provides a very lovely framework for you to start writing your resume or edit your resume, while making sure that you're putting all the chances on your side and you are giving yourself a slightly more edge when it comes to the competition. And now we have proof, we have data-backed tips on how to make sure that your CV writing is at its best. If you have any more questions on your CV writing or tips, just ask them in the comment section. I will try to reply to as many of you as possible. Good luck with your CV writing, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.